I'm going to go through some of the concepts around attribution modelling to start, and we'll see where we find ourselves from there. So introducing Ian, not this Ian, who did turn up to the last event I was at, which is why I honoured him by having him as my main guy. But this is Ian, he's a customer of our website. And he came to our website, he spent £250, and this kind of ties in with Sam's point previously, because what we saw is he came in via PPC, yard clothing, we paid 20 pence for that click through. Brilliant, look at that, 20 pence click generating £250 worth of revenue. What we actually know really is that's not the entire story. So I've given a very simple view on the sorts of things he might have done before, but the point is he almost certainly had some other touch points. So he almost certainly looked at some SEO that we did before, some generic PPC maybe, some paid media, around display advertising. You know, there's a whole host of other ways that we're driving people to our websites, and we need to make sure that we're understanding and accrediting all of these different things as well. So, I suppose actually, by way of attribution model, the people who put their hands up to say they use an attribution model, is it one of these 4 attribution models? If it is, put your hands up. So that was most of the people, I think, who raised their hands. So, there are a couple of different attribution models. I mean, last click in itself is an attribution model of sorts. First click is what people started to look at many years ago when they said, well, actually, last click's maybe not right. Let's look at giving the creditor the first thing that drove someone to us. And then you look at things like linear, and you look at U-shaped models, and there are a whole host of different models that can be applied to this. The point here in looking at this slide is if you look at the difference between where we've credited the £250 sale in each of these cases, the results are wildly different. So even when we start looking at attribution modelling, what we can get into is this real quagmire of not really knowing still where the value should have gone. So what we tend to advocate is the use of a different method of attribution modelling. Most attribution models tend to look backwards, so they say, we've had a sale, great, what do we do with the revenue? What we want people to start looking at is actually a slightly different approach to it. So we look again at Ian's sort of journey, I suppose, to becoming a customer of ours. And what if we were to look at his journey at all the different touch points where he came to the site? So actually, rather than saying sale happened, let's look at what happened before that. We start to say, what can we do with the information that we've got as he started to engage with us? Ties a little bit into the model which Sam presented. I've got some different words for it, you'll see how shortly. Goals here are very similar, and that's great, because actually what we want to do is still understand where should this value go for the attribution work that we're doing. So all the different efforts that are going into different marketing channels, let's make sure that we're recognising them for what they provided. The difference, though, what we need to look at is all the visits. So we're no longer just saying this is a subset of people who bought, let's look at what they did. We now want to be able to understand every visit that someone had when they came to our site, whether they were converting or non-converting visits. The way we tend to do that here at Yard, or one way that we've had some success, I should say, is using propensity modelling, using logistical regression. Hands up if that means anything to anyone? Great, that's brilliant. That's probably the first person that wasn't Emily that's had their hand up before. The point there as well is the probability of a sale, so the chance that you get to the sale isn't necessarily the same as understanding the probability of all of your attributed conversion points. Hands up if you knew what that is then. That's the logistical regression formula. I'm not going to dwell on that too much. I put it there because it makes me look really smart. And if no one else puts their hands up, that's brilliant. I look like the smartest in the room at that point. The point is, though, this is just a method, this is just a mathematical method of being able to credit all of the different visits, or being able to understand for every single visit that came to site, what was the chance of them actually becoming a customer when they did these things. The point of having that up there actually is each of these different beta 1s and W1s and each of the different betas that we've got there represent factors on our website that we're going to use to score each of these visits to see how good they were. The W's are the weights. That is in effect the only bit of machine learning that happens there. It's the automatic weighting of those bits. Bringing it back to non-maths, what that means is we can actually control what factors we're looking at that we think are important and we think will indicate how much value a channel should get for driving people to our website. So some of the factors that we have in the digital world: on-site duration, how long was someone on our website, normally a good indicator of how engaged they were. The number of page views, very similar. the number of the visits that they were on with us. So it was the first one, it's probably at the top end of that marketing funnel. As they get to their second, third, towards the 7 or 8 that Sam was talking about, they become more likely to become a customer, then they start to check out, add to basket, so on and so forth. The list goes on and on. And the point is, with this, we can actually use this information to understand the visits and therefore to give fair credit to those channels driving those visits to us. So instead of the data we had there before, which was the cost of getting someone to the site for us, we've now got an understanding of what the probability was of them buying at each of these touch points. So at Ian's touch points through the site, we know he was increasing the likelihood of buying with us. So there you go, machine learning based attribution model. Look at that. Different to the other ones that you'd have seen before, but actually a way of giving credit fairly, arguably fairly, to all the different visits that drove people to our site. Hang on. We did have one in there, however, that then instead of increasing the probability, drove the probability down, actually reduced the chance of Ian becoming a customer of ours on the website. That's the one, they went from 0.82 likely to 0.76 likely. So actually, how do we deal with that one? How do we treat that one differently? So what we now tend to look at, and this is really simplifying the model that we tend to use here, guys, what we've now started to look at is actually, well, these incrementers then, how much did each visit increment the chance of someone buying are a good indication of the value, therefore, that was driven by that visit to site. You'll notice for that remarketing one, the social paid one, it was actually negative, so we can actually take value off that channel if we want to, give actually a negative amount of sales and a negative amount of revenue for the one that had that impact. It's very different. You'll not find another attribution model that actually penalises those channels, but in our view, and in views shared by some of our clients, that's actually a fairer way of understanding what works and what doesn't work. We end up with something like this. So basically this graph is all the stuff on the left side is our last click channel. So that's where the value used to live. All the stuff on the right hand side is our attributed value. So you can see there that what we're doing in effect is taking some credit that would have been allocated previously to last click. So all of our brand marketers saying, oh, we're doing a brilliant job because everyone knows our brand, they're all coming to the site and they're all buying. Actually what we're saying is, well, there was quite a lot of stuff that happened before that, including quite a lot of PPC in this case, that drove people to the site and therefore got some credit for doing that. This is live data, I'm not going to say who it was, but this is an actual graph that's been produced for a client previously. Of course, people buy more than once, and actually then we've got another conundrum. So how do we now start to allocate value to people who bought for a second time? Where do we start the model at that point? Well, one argument is we started here. So they've had a sale, that's great, let's market out them again. So this second visit of Ian's, it was an SEO, PPC brand again. His value went up, he bought £290 worth of stuff this time, and we spent 50p to get it to that point, which is great. It doesn't necessarily tell the entire story though, because what we know is all of this stuff happened before it, for that first sale. So what we can then start to do is have a look at these probabilities as well, and in an ideal world, what we'd love to be able to do is this, basically. So what we can now say is, there's all the value, there's all the visits, let's attribute that value out to everything that went before it. The only issue with doing that is, most people in most businesses don't want to wait until someone stops being a customer before they understand the value of their marketing campaigns. They want to be a bit more dynamic than that, they want to be able to respond differently to things that are working and which aren't working. Sorry, lots of numbers on here. Starting to get a little bit heavy, but what we can start to look at instead is a very similar way to how we did it previously. We start to look at the probability of sale at this point. So actually, once you've bought a product, you're then quite likely, or more likely, to be buying a second product, and actually we can start to share out this value amongst all of the historic first visits that we saw before. So over time, what we will see is some of our campaigns will change, months ahead. And the value that we've reported will change ongoing. The point here is this is all trend stuff, so we know again what works and what doesn't work with our attribution model. I'll give this this chat most recently at an event, weirdly, for people who sold Xerox printers. They invite me along. I don't even know how I ended up there. Actually, the stuff that I presented there that day is quite relevant here as well. what I'm going to talk about now, just a couple of slides, is how we also look at physical data, so physical data points as well. So I talked about this story before, but actually as part of our marketing, what we did is we also sent this chap, once we'd started to engage with him, we sent him some direct mail, he came to a store, we sent him a catalogue, and then he continued his digital journey. I've obviously simplified this down for him, just for the purposes of showing what it is we can do there. So, in fact, where we said this was the 0.19 that we gave to SEO back then, that may well have been wrong. That may well have been broken up into these other events that maybe we didn't consider when we were just looking at the digital journey. The point here is all of the principles still apply. And then it becomes a data challenge. And it was, I've got to say, it was really weird actually being at a Xerox sales event where I was the only one advocating physical brochures going to people. All they're talking about there is just digital everything, digital everything. But what we find ourselves with is actually a sort of generation of people coming up now who like the sort of feel of a brochure. They like to have something in their hand that they can look at, flip through, makes them feel important maybe, I don't know. But this is becoming very much back on the table as something we need to consider as a sort of valid marketing channel. The point is, what we had before is a number of ways of collecting event data, and again, this is just a data challenge. This just becomes an extension of that problem. So here are the sort of historic ones I talked about in terms of we've got website data, we've got digital data, we can use cookies, we can track people, we've got their identifiers, we know how to join digital data. Typically people know how to join digital data. What we also know though, if we think about it, if we break it down, is for these people actually quite a lot of information. So someone gives us a brochure request, we know who they are, we know where they live. That sounds a bit sinister, but you know what I mean. We've got information about them that we can then use to join their record. So actually we can start to build up, even with the physical data in as well, a good idea of how they're doing happened on our website, but also with all of our other more traditional marketing channels. All we're looking to do is to join people together, to understand who they are and what they've done with us, and what drove them really to buy the product with us. This just gives a flavour of how some of those things might happen, but actually you can see here we may have considered these as 4 different people, but when we start to get into the point of having their email address, having their physical address, we can start to put them together into a single record. So it's just a data challenge. There may be some different factors that we want to look at. So some of the factors now might be how long did they spend in the store, how many times did they come to us and use a marketing ID that came from one of these letters or catalogues or things that we sent to them. The challenge itself is exactly the same, and the model itself is the same, and the attribution model then becomes much of an extension of what we've talked about already. I want to talk about these visits because what we're kind of talking about here, like I said, because we're going forwards thinking rather than backwards thinking as most attribution models do, actually, it's important we do then is to start to tie this into our marketing strategies, to start to tie this into understanding the business at different stages through their marketing life cycle with us. So what we were effectively doing when we did our attribution model just now was scoring every visit inside of a sales journey. We know a lot about these visits when they happen. So what you end up with is not just the ability to say which channels were valuable to us, but also which landing pages were good for us, which browsers are we good at and not good at, which device types are we good at, are we better on mobile. So we can start to bring a lot more here. So our attribution model isn't now just about how do we score our sales channels, it becomes about how well do we perform as a business across multiple facets. I talk a lot about attribution, I'm obviously therefore a real advocate of it being used across an entire business, but you can see how this information then becomes important for more than just the marketing team. Same is true of our attributes for physical visits, so why not tie that stuff in as well? Which catalogue worked well, which stores are performing well, which, all the different things that we know about those bits as well can be tied in to give us more reporting around that too. And then what that means is actually, to tie this back to something meaningful and tangible at the end, we can start to look at actual digital sales by channel. Great. That's the point of attribution reporting, obviously. But how about actual digital website sales by store that someone went to physically? Or actual digital sales by which direct mail did we send people, or which catalogue, or what content are they looking at? the sort of reporting possibilities become endless then, and this becomes a real valuable asset to a business doing this sort of stuff right. Something else, another real sweeping statement from me here. All too often, most people look at attribution right down there, and I've kind of alluded to this already. So we look at marketing, and we get some landing pages, and we do some SEO and some CRO, and we look at our analytics. Oh, and then at the end we think, oh, we should have done some attribution reports, so let's get some attribution reporting in there as well. What we actually can do with this, though, is take this data, because again, we're predicting how likely someone is to buy at all these stages. We can take this data, we can take our data that we're calculating as someone is journeying through an experience with us, and look at targeting marketing for those people based on this data points that we're collecting. Look at dynamic content, CRO, personalization for these people based on what we know about them and how likely they are to buy at any time. Look at things like analysis and segmentation of these people, so we can start to group them and target them differently because we know more now about them, and we know more about where they're likely to be through this marketing life cycle. After the last time we did this, Sam, I probably should have paid this to sim race, but never mind.
You did say you were
I did promise I would, yeah, actually. But this is the same sort of thing that Sam was talking about. We're acquiring visitors up here, so we've got an acquisition stage. We're nurturing those people. We're helping them to come to a decision to become a customer of ours, and then we're converting them. And that obviously starts over and over again as people buy more. So we can take this propensity scoring in to supplement the sort of positions within here, and then to start targeting people using some of the strategies that have been proposed today. That's it from me. Some people whose images I stole, so I always put those in there as thanks to those people. Ian, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.